Welcome to Larp Academia. Today, we're going to talk about what is the best weapon to use. What is the best weapon for you and in Vampire the Masquerade in general? Now, there are generally three categories for weapons. There are your own natural weapons, like your fangs and claws. There are guns, that you would shoot people with. And there's also swords, which you would have to take out and slash people with. Now, I, as a Ventrue and as a true prince, deal with the best weapons for Ventrue, and that is our minions. I don't use any guns, claws, or swords. In fact, I'm laughably bad at them, but I do have loyal subjects to do my fighting for me. Now, if you aren't a Ventrue like myself, or a prince who's in the same position as many Ventrue are, or just someone else, I guess, who needs to defend themselves, you might want to figure out which is the best weapon to defend yourself in this world of darkness that we live in. Well, let's go over them. The weapon that most vampires would consider as the strongest would be our very own claws, or fangs, if we could use them. Now, our fangs aren't the best in combat. You can't really go in and just, hey, stay still, I'm gonna bite you. No. That's for feeding. They're for feeding against the kind, or the mortal cattle that we have to gain our sustenance from. And I'm talking about more useful supernatural weapons, like our claws. Well, not my claws, obviously. I can't really grow them out or make them into something impressive. There are a few vampires that can, though. The ones that come to mind are primarily the gangrels. They love supernatural weapons and claws, so they would spend some blood to create these supernatural claws and then go and rip things to shreds. Now, with most weapons, there is a strength and a weakness. The strength with supernatural weapons, your claws, is that they're very accessible, easy to use, and are very effective against most supernatural beings. After all, we have hardy bodies that can resist a lot of punishment that the mortals wouldn't be able to deal with. But the weakness to claws is that they cost blood in order to use. That way, if you have a particularly stupid gangrel, which is most gangrels, you will be able to shoot them, get them enraged, have them take out their claws, use their blood, run away, and then do it again, bait them again, and then make them run out of blood, go into a frenzy, whatever else, make them lose themselves. And dealing with a beast is easier than dealing with an intelligent being. Claws also have another weakness. Their second weakness is that they don't have a lot of range. This is not very far. And if someone is shooting me with a gun, well, they can take pod shots at me all day, and if my only weapons are claws, then I'm not going to be able to deal with that perpetrator. No, I need to have something else, because claws are good, but they're not the be-all end-all. But what about a gun? A gun solves that problem of shooting someone from range and from being able to deal with them wherever. Now, the problem is that guns are not very effective against supernatural beings. Guns were meant to kill kind, the mortals. They made them to kill each other, which is fantastic or whatever. But for us, if a bullet hits us, oh, that's cute. It doesn't do anything. We're not little sacks of blood and meat that just once hit, everything pops open and we can't survive anymore. No. Guns are not that effective. Not only against vampires, but against other supernatural beings, like ghosts, ghouls even, or werewolves. But if you're trying to fight a werewolf, then, well, I would highly suggest that you look at our video on werewolves in the description down below, or visit our article on our blog. Our blog contains many tips for you, and so does this channel, actually. That reminds me, you should like, subscribe, and ding the notification bell to get more information about how to survive in the world of darkness. Now, where were we? Oh yes, guns. Guns, while being able to hit things from far away and not deal any damage, can solve that problem by changing their ammunition. They are able to have silvered bullets against those werewolves, which will be a minor annoyance, but with enough bullets it might do something. You may be able to change the ammunition in guns to fit whoever you're facing, if you know beforehand. If you're fighting a vampire and you've found out that there are ultraviolet bullets, then you could first use the ultraviolet bullets if you're an idiot, or second, if you're an idiot, this works, or if you're smart, you'll do this first, destroy the ultraviolet bullets and not only wherever they came from, but whoever made them. Because if ultraviolet bullets get taken from you, they'll be a pain for you to deal with. For all the other vampires, no one's going to be happy with you. You're going to be hunted. There's just don't deal with ultraviolet bullets if you can, and try to make sure they don't ever exist, because that would be a pain. Now, guns also run out of ammunition. If you have a 6-shot revolver that's going to tickle a little bit, you're going to be caught with your pants down when you try to take out the bullets, reload again as you see a werewolf who has claws charging at you and just ripping you to shreds. You can make this weakness not as drastic by having extra clips or extended magazines, but again, bullets tickle. They don't really hurt. Well, they do kind of hurt, but not nearly as much as they should. Now, if you want something that will have a huge wallop, then you should get a melee weapon. Now, there are generally 2 types of melee weapons for us. There are swords and daggers. Now, daggers are little toothpicks that, if you're really using daggers, you should be using claws. And if you don't have claws and you're using daggers, you're in a desperate strait. Or you're trying to assassinate someone, assassinate a mortal, or something along those lines. And daggers should never be a primary or really a secondary weapon that you'd rely upon. Unless they're coated with poison or something else, then yeah, maybe. But straight daggers by themselves, not so much. However, many vampires have taken on a trend where they would carry katanas on their backs or some other swords, and while you're able to hide it from the mortals by using obfuscate or whatever else have you, other supernaturals are able to see your sword. They're able to see what you're wielding, and they'll be able to deal with it. Now, you may have a silvered sword to deal with werewolves, but against many supernatural creatures, we're not the sturdiest of the groups. We're not like a werewolf. We're not like many other things. In fact, we're more numerous than them, so our numbers and our cunning give us an advantage. Going into melee with someone is not the best solution if you're going in by yourself, or even if you're going in by yourself, you might end up suffering a final death, potentially. So, swords, while they're nice, and while they can cleanly cut, they need to be laced with the proper material. If you're trying to cut a vampire, they're not as effective as sunlight or fire or anything along those lines. What you need, instead of all of these, is information. Information is the greatest weapon that a vampire can have. If you know your enemy's habits, weaknesses, vices, activities, you're able to plan almost anything you want. You could make it so that that pesky rival ends up coming onto the scene of a dead body while the cops are there and he's completely set up. They'll follow him, they'll chase him, and he won't be able to rest during the day, or they'll break into his place and turns to ash. You could make it so that if there's a werewolf, you could try to set it up so that there's a whole different investigation based on this werewolf. You can make it so that their brethren end up fighting against them, turning against themselves. If you're fighting a vampire, will be able to figure out where they go, what they do, and then you can do just about anything. Now, if you don't have information, you are the one who is likely to lose. Some vampires still don't think this is good enough. They still want more. And while information is the best weapon, the second best weapon that I found, if you don't kill yourself with it, is fire of some sort. I've seen a vampire who has actually carried a bag of napalm grenades. Now, why a bag and why not on himself? Well, let's say something happens to ignite that bag. The bag's gone. He's not necessarily dead, but he has insurance weapons so that he can use against anyone else and probably not die. So fire is really the second best weapon aside from information. If you can make something burn, then it is very likely that it will die. Now, I hope you make use of the best weapons available to you, information and possibly fire, or whatever the weakness is of that creature. And I hope that you use information in a way to give you an advantage in order to avoid your final death. Until next night, stay safe.